So I went in for the 3-hour test, and they took my fasting blood sugar first, and it was slightly high again before I even drank the juice, right? Just slightly. And so the lady was like, "Okay, I'm gonna stop taking the test. We're not even gonna finish the test." And I was like, "Okay, right? That seemed weird to me, but I just like, they're the doctor, so or the nurse." So then she told me to go sit in a room. So I went into this room, and I was sitting there and waiting and kind of like uncomfortable and like worried, and and I was like, "Oh my gosh, do I have gestational diabetes? This is really scary." And so then the nurse came back and she goes, "Okay, we're gonna go ahead and diagnose you with gestational diabetes and list you as high risk." And I was like, "Whoa!" Because my numbers were high by like a couple of points. I was just kind of like, and they didn't even do the whole test, right? So I was just, but I didn't. At that moment, I was just kind of like overwhelmed and surprised because I mean, as you guys know, I've had one of the easiest pregnancies ever. There hasn't really been any complications or anything. I don't know. I was just kind of like, I didn't know how to take that. I was upset. So my mom had come with me because a couple of you guys had recommended not to drive, because they said you feel shaky afterwards. So I went out to see my mom, and my mom was just kind of like shocked. And my mom, she does a lot of stuff, medical things, and so she kind of has an idea of what's going on. So she was very like, "That's very odd that they didn't complete the test, that doesn't seem right, blah, blah, blah." And she was like, "Well, what were your numbers?" And I told her, and she was like, "That's not really high at all." And she, like I said, she knows a lot about this stuff. So I was just kind of like, "Mom, I don't know what to think." So the nurse gave me the number of this nutritionist, can't talk, and told me I needed to make an appointment with her. Then they gave me prescription for a monitor, like a glucose monitor, the strips, the little lancets, the things that poke you, all that. And the nurse even made a comment that I didn't have any other symptoms because my fundus, or however you say that, when they measure your belly, was actually measuring it happened at the last appointment too. Like my, believe it or not, as huge as my stomach looks when I show you guys, I'm actually still measuring below the standard. So usually, I guess one of the signs with gestational diabetes is your fundus is larger because your baby's getting bigger. It doesn't always happen, but that's just a typical sign. Also is excessive weight gain. Haven't done that. I was like scared to eat anything. I was just like, "Oh my gosh, like I don't even know, I was just like scared to eat anything." So I still ate that day, but I just ate like ridiculously healthy, like overdoing it. And I didn't pick up my prescription until later, so I didn't take my reading until late that night. Well, when I took my reading that night, 2 hours after a meal, it's supposed to be below. Well, according to the Diabetes Center of America and the nurse, they had told me it's supposed to be below 140, but I came to find out that somebody said that 2 hours after it should be below 120. But regardless, mine was like 76, guys, after a meal. That's low. If anything, that's like low. So I was like, okay, whatever. And so then I started testing myself, and my blood sugar levels were always super low. So then I got braver with my food. Like, we had gone to Galveston, and we went to Landry's, and so I had gotten this chicken dish that had like a cream cheese sauce on it. I had salad with like a honey mustard dressing. So honey mustard dressing is very sugary. Bread, which if you're diabetic, bread is like very sugary. It's the carbs in it. Oh, and then chocolate mousse cake for dessert. Like, I pigged out, you guys. Then I took my reading 2 hours later. It wasn't even at 100. Your fasting blood sugar, meaning when you haven't eaten anything, it can be 100. So I was like, if that didn't make my numbers high, and like even my mom was just, I don't know. And I just kept testing, and I kept getting braver and braver, and I just kind of still would eat what I wanted. And I did try to eat more healthy in general, but that's like not because of this, just because I'm doing that for the baby. Never had high readings, guys. Never. Readings were always low. I went in and I had all my sugar readings and my list of food. So I went into the nutritionalist. She weighs me, right? Then she looks at my chart and she's like, "Oh, you still haven't gained any weight since your last appointment or the appointment before that." She's like, "That's not typical of gestational diabetes." And I was like, really? Like, I'm about to show you some other things that don't seem typical gestational diabetes. I didn't say that, but I was thinking it. And I was like, I eat, my stomach's gotten huge, so the baby's growing. And she was just like, okay, let's go. So into her office, she started looking at all my levels, and she was like, your sugars are always really low. And I was like, yeah, they are. And then, she started talking to me about things, and she started going through, healthy meal plans and what kind of food did I like so she could make me a meal plan. And I was just kind of like, okay, look. It's like, if I have a problem, I'm the first one who wants to fix it or do the right thing to, make it everything okay, especially for the baby. And I told her, I was like, but I'm going to be honest with you. It's like, look at what I've eaten. I was like, whether I ate something very balanced and diabetic appropriate or I totally picked out, my levels were always great. Not just good, but great. And I was like, I'm not trying to be in denial, but the numbers speak for themselves. This isn't just like my word against facts. This is facts against facts. Like, it's just the numbers. And she looked at him and she was like, yeah, your numbers are low. And I was just kind of like, so, and I told her, I was like, no, I'll admit, like, my level, whenever my fasting level that one day was a couple of points high. And so she looked at like my level on my sheet and she was like, I wonder why they didn't finish testing you. This isn't high enough to stop the test. And I was like, thank you. And she was like, that's weird that they didn't finish testing you. It's weird that they stopped. And I was just like, yeah, it is weird. It's also weird that I had to go spend $75 on diabetic monitoring equipment when apparently I don't need it, and also $50 for you because she's a specialist, right? And she kept saying things like, this doesn't match up, and most of my clients are like this, and even when you ate that, your blood sugar should have been high, and it's not. But yet, so anyway, so at the end of the day, I was finally like, okay, so do you think that maybe I was misdiagnosed? And she was like, well... And you could tell that she was kind of like, yeah. She was like, well, I don't know. I don't want to remove the tag. She's like, but it does seem weird. And she even called it a tag, like that they tagged my records as being high risk. And I was just like, okay. And then see, I'm supposed, if you just have gestational diabetes, at least at my doctors, you're supposed to go see them every 2 weeks. So she was like, I tell you what, she's like, I don't think you really need to see me again. And I was just like, so I don't need to see you again, but you're not going to remove the tag, right? So she was just, she just kept saying that. And then she added, she'd been going through the meal chart with me. She's like, actually, I don't think I'm going to make a meal plan for you. I think you're doing fine on your own. And then she was like, and here, there was a list of forbidden food that if you have gestational diabetes, you really shouldn't eat. And it's the obvious things like cookies and cakes and things like that. And even fruit, you're supposed to limit your fruit a lot because fruit can really send your sugars crazy. So she was like, you know what, actually, you can go ahead and eat more fruit. I think it's fine. And then she was like looking at that forbidden list, and she handed it to me. She goes, actually, you know what, you could go ahead and have stuff on this list too. I think it'll be okay. I was like, are you serious? So I don't have to come see you. I don't have to keep a food diary. I can pretty much eat whatever I want, including cookies and cakes, but you're not going to remove my tag. It just really made me mad. Basically, they made a mistake. They didn't finish my test, and they're not going to, admit it, And then my cousin is a lawyer here in Houston, and he said that the industry gets sued so much because he said it could even... They even get sued from people where this type of thing happens, where someone like me, I would never do this, but apparently it actually happens a lot, where people could sue them even just for causing emotional distress. Because, and I would never do it. I think that's extreme, but I will say that, look at me now, guys. I'm really worked up about it. It did stress me out. I was paranoid and concerned and worried for nothing, for no reason at all, And it's just ridiculous. And he said that so that they don't want to necessarily, it's easier for them to just keep going and not make a big deal about it than it is for them to be like, you know what, we didn't test you properly, or we didn't finish your test. And what's funny is I even asked her, I was like, well, can I retake the test? And she was like, at this point, let's just move forward, but you really don't need to worry. And anyway, that was my experience. Not a good experience with all this. But you know what? At the end of the day, apparently I don't have a problem. And I still keep taking my sugar levels just because I'm not going to lie. Every time I take a sugar level and it's perfect, which is every time, I feel very, very vindicated. So, anyway, so that's that.